this is a time for satire. Historically, this is a time for satire. It's a time for every form of criticism and exploration of injustice that we can grab onto. I'm going to keep this megaphone as loud and shrill as I can, and I'm going to hit it on as many different stylistic approaches that I can.
When we realize that we're not alone and that there's so many others out there that feel the way we do, it gives us so much power.
Welcome to episode 244 of the Refuse Fascism podcast, a podcast brought to you by volunteers with Refuse Fascism. I'm Sam Goldman, one of those volunteers and host of the show. Refuse Fascism works to unite all who can be united to join in mass nonviolent protests and resistance in the streets and throughout society, growing to include millions and refusing to stop until we create such a profound political crisis that Trump cannot impose his fascist program or even maintain his hold on power. I want to thank our patrons, our sustainers who make the show possible. Join our community today for as little as $2 a month at patreon.com/refusefascism. Thanks to those sharing the show, everyone who buys our merch to support and spread the show at a time where we really need to spread this. See the show notes to get your sticker packs, and we have a new t-shirt design that I know you're going to want to check out. A special thank you to those who help the algorithms that help grow our audience by rating and reviewing the show on Apple Podcasts, rating on Spotify, or whatever is the listening platform of choice you use. It boosts this show so much. And I just wanted to share a recent review we got over on Apple Podcast earlier this month from LH Tukes. They titled their review, "One of the best long-form podcasts," gave us 5 stars, thank you very much, and wrote, "This is one of the better long-form anti-fascist, anti-Trump, anti-MAGA podcasts. I love all the direct quotations and audio clips in the show. It gives a lot of credibility." Thank you so much, LH Tukes. I hope we don't disappoint you too much with this episode because we don't have a lot of direct quotations or any audio clips, but we will continue to do so in the future. So thanks for sharing. And to everyone else, after listening, please share your thoughts to help others find this resource. In today's show, we're sharing 2 interviews with artists who are against fascism, who use their art to fight fascism. First, you'll hear from cartoonist Dwayne Booth, aka Mr. Fish, and then Karen Fiorito, who's up to some billboard art. But first, since we were off protesting last weekend, we got to talk about last Saturday, the hands-off protests. They were incredibly powerful. Dwayne and Karen both speak to this in their interviews. These protests involved over 1 million, possibly more people, in 1,300 protest locations, including deep red small towns. These were the most significant outpourings yet of the decent people in this country, those who hate and fear what Trump is doing. And it is extremely important that this began to break the sense of anger and isolation, of being alone in one's anguish, of passivity and helplessness. It is very positive that there was a significant strain of people at these protests with their homemade signs calling Trump out as the fascist he is. Maybe you were one of those people. When I was out in DC, I got to meet a listener of the podcast from Philly, which was really cool. But even cooler, our demand, "Trump must go," resonated with tens of thousands, and thousands joined in our pledge, "In the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America." Thousands taking our call to conscience, a call to act. Many taking stacks home with them to get in their community. Hundreds taking pictures of our Trump Hitler giant refuse fascism sign made by Jeremy, an artist. And Jeremy has made replicas available at refusefascism.org that you can get out in your community. So see the show notes to get yours. Anyway, to me, it demonstrated, and I hope it demonstrates to you as well, that there is a force that can stop this nightmare. I found it to be a real beginning. If all those who attended, and many more, are moved to see that the Trump MAGA regime is fascist. What this means: need more than one protest. We can't rely on normal channels. Elections will be too late and they won't work. And what it requires of us: acting before it becomes too late, following the lead of South Korea, who drove out a tyrant again. They impeached the Friday, the day before these hands-off protests, they impeached their president and he was indicted. We need to rise as one, not once, but filling the streets again and again and again, shaking all of society, strengthening people in the institutions to defy the regime, and calling forth more people in the streets with such determination, such strength in size and cause and relentlessness that we create a situation where Trump cannot govern. He can't rule. He can't carry out his fascist program, can't even hold on to the reins of power. This is what needs to become the mission of millions, not grab them by the midterms, because seriously, waiting for 2026, waiting for 2028 is sheer madness. That's us greenlighting fascism. Just think of how far along fascism will be by then if we wait. How locked in it will become, the horrors that we will have allowed to become normalized, the channels of protest, of dissent, the rights that will be cut off. And if you think he will respect these elections and give up power, you really don't get what is going on. So to everyone who does get what's going on and wants to be part of the mission that I just described, wants to make that real, save the date for Trump Must Go emergency assemblies. Sunday, April 27th in New York City, in Chicago, in LA. I'll be in New York City. Join people who want to get on a mission to defeat Trump MAGA fascism. Bring your talents, your creativity, your networks, your resources. Stay tuned for more details. See our social media at Refuse Fascism or visit our website, refusefascism.org, for more. Now, a word on This Week in Fascism. The United States military has been given control over a vast swath of land along the Mexican border to advance Trump's fascist anti-immigrant agenda. The immediate plans are to use the military's resources to construct barriers and surveillance, but it's widely believed that this will lead to massive detention centers under the military's command or built by the military to be used by DHS. This is cruel. This is illegal. This is fascism. On Friday, in the case of Mahmoud Khalil, an immigration judge ruled that Marco Rubio is allowed to deport any immigrant who says something that he doesn't like. For some necessary background, an immigration judge is not a judge, but an employee of the executive branch. In effect, this is Trump's Department of Justice telling Trump's Department of Homeland Security and State Department that they can do exactly what Trump wants. Beyond Khalil's case, Inside Higher Ed exposed in the past couple of days that Secretary of State Rubio has revoked over 900 students' visas over their political views and statements, with the Department of Homeland Security announcing that they have begun monitoring immigrant social media accounts for criticism of the genocide Israel is carrying out against the people of Gaza, or in their words, quote-unquote anti-Semitism. But ICE isn't waiting for kids to get to college. This week, they attempted to enter 2 elementary schools in Los Angeles, searching for children as young as first grade. These 2 schools righteously refused them entry, but how long until they force their way in? This is heartless. It is wild. It is fascism. Meanwhile, the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security are now being joined by the IRS, DOJ, and the Social Security Administration in their mission to terrorize immigrants and refugees, with the IRS committing to illegally sharing tax information with immigration authorities. The Social Security Administration rescinding valid Social Security numbers from immigrants, and with DOJ supposedly, quote-unquote, working in all the agencies, according to a White House staffer quoted by Politico, to find means and justifications for ever-expanded detentions, deportations, and more. Meanwhile, in what many are prematurely calling a victory, the Supreme Court declined to overrule a lower court judge who ordered the United States government to return Kilmer Rodrigo Garcia from El Salvador's CCOT torture camp. This is the man who Trump's goons tore away from his family in Maryland, shackled and delivered directly into the custody of Bukele's fascist government to imprison amidst the violent gangs he escaped from, all by accident, due to a so-called administrative error. No one is known to have ever left CCOT. Bukele makes clear that this is not simply a prison. There is not even a fig leaf of rehabilitation. This is a place to discard human beings and confine them, torture them systematically for the rest of their lives without a whiff of due process. Despite the claims of the Justice Department and the White House spokeswoman that it's out of their hands now that Mr. Garcia is in Salvadorian custody, the judge has ordered his return, and demanded daily updates on the regime's efforts to do so. When it reached the Supreme Court, instead of overruling the lower court, they merely chided the judge to pay, quote, due regard for the deference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs, end quote, and warned him against exceeding his authority. Until Mr. Garcia arrives home to his family, people must continue to demand his return and the return of the hundreds who the regime sent to SCOTUS. We need to also note that this week, the Supreme Court allowed Trump to continue to deport Venezuelans under the Alien Enemies Act. On Monday, April 14th, Trump and Bukele have a working meeting. And when they meet, we need to get our feet in the street. Monday, April 14th, join protests in D.C. at noon at the El Salvador Embassy at 1400 16th Street Northwest, and in New York City at noon at the El Salvador Consulate, 14 West, 37th Street. Demand free Kilmar Abrego Garcia and all those Trump has locked into El Salvador's SCOTUS torture prison. Stop the demonization, abduction, deportation of all immigrants and refugees. The Trump fascist regime must go. If they are allowed to send a human being to arguably the world's most notorious prison, particularly by accident, and then wash their hands of him, this could happen to literally anyone. And that, my friends, is the point. This is what fascism is. It is wild. It is reckless. It is lawless. It is overtly racist. It is overtly misogynistic. It is overtly xenophobic. It's forceful subjugation, cruelty with no end. Fascism has direction and momentum. It does not do halfway, and it cannot even take satisfaction from getting their way, because when they get their way, they are compelled to go further, harder, to an idealized and impossible state of total domination. This week, White House spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt confirmed that they are actively looking into options for deporting U.S. citizens to SCOTUS. There is a point where it becomes too late to stop them, where all avenues for redress are shut off. But we have not reached that point yet, and it's incumbent on all of us to take responsibility to drive the Trump fascist regime from power before that happens. With that, here's my interview with political satirist and cartoonist Dwayne Booth, aka Mr. Fish. So I'm really, really honored to get to talk to Dwayne Booth. You know as Mr. Fish, if you've looked at any of his cartoons that I know that so many of you deeply appreciate. I just really honored to get to talk to him. Welcome, Dwayne. So good to get to meet you.
Great to meet you.
Let's talk about the consequence of speaking out, of expressing through, whether it's through speech or through art, any form of dissent, and the particularity of dissent around what I feel is the genocide in Gaza. You have been fired from UPenn for doing, I believe, your work. It was part of quote unquote budgetary cuts that didn't just affect you, in addition affected many others, I believe. If you wanted to talk how at the university level you see the crushing of free speech, of academic freedom, of doing the work that you do.
All the fun stuff. No, absolutely. Again, there's so many ways to approach this subject. It's the most obvious thing to talk about is the preemptive capitulation of all these colleges and universities to, power brokers in the government and this surrender. I'd say over the last 20 years, colleges have been more and more run like businesses. They're there for job prep. They're not there to encourage people to soul search and figure out what their voices should sound like, how their heart should be beating. How do I graduate and still be able to have a white-knuckled grip on my soul? These are things, when I was younger, that's what university life was about. I loved it, to have that freedom. I was laid off with a bunch of other adjuncts, and I don't doubt that it was for budgetary reasons. That said, it's been a rough year and a half, because I did get wildly attacked beginning last February for the work that I was doing criticizing Israel. The Washington Free Beacon wrote this horrible article about me, accusing me of anti-Semitism, and actually pulling a lot of the work that I had done for Chris Hedges, for his columns. Many of the things that they were pointing to as proof of anti-Semitism were illustrations that I had done in the context of his work. So they were removed from context and then framed in these really hideous ways, which was just grossly unfair. And the sad fact of the matter is that the interim president, Larry Jameson, decided to support the attacks on me and say that my stuff was reprehensible and contributed to hate on campus, and also made the idiotic public statement that this is not a time for satire, which to me, he doesn't know what satire is, obviously. This is a time for satire. Historically, this is a time for satire. It's a time for every form of criticism and exploration of injustice that we can grab onto. Unfortunately, having the statement coming out of the interim president, who, again, he was protecting my right to free speech, but basically saying, yes, he is an anti-Semite, but he has free speech. That doesn't make the institution look good. And it does not look good for me because it is not true. I've been doing this work, as you said, for, my gosh, I first got published in 1990. I've been published when magazines and newspapers were a thing. I was the Harper's cartoonist for Harper's Magazine. I used to work for the Los Angeles Times, the Village Voice. I've been around for a while. So I was painted as some lunatic who had a computer in my basement and just nothing but hate to spew. So I was attacked for that reason. Of course, none of the work that I was being accused of is stuff that I even teach in my class. In my class is I teach the history of satire, and I do teach the history of art as commentary. And I'm certainly not alone in being controversial. And it's really important to have all of, so-called controversial conversation, debate, looked at and considered. All you have to do is take what is the context and what is the intent. That's really all you have to do for all kinds of language, not just visual language. Yes, when you're a cartoonist and you're an artist, you're trying to create work that is provocative, that is startling, that is going to get a reaction. What is missing now is we've lost the ability or the spaces wherein we can then have a substantive conversation about these things. And that's a problem for people like me, because I do want to have conversations. After all the blow up of last year, so much of my day was answering emails. People would attack me and they would be very angry, and I would respond to them. Because if people are going to be upset and they're going to take the hyperbole of the right-wing media to frame who I am, I'd hate myself too. So reach out to me. Many people did, and I would have meaningful exchanges with them. And literally every single time I did that, at the end of the conversations, they would apologize and they would say, I'm sorry, you're a decent person. Some of them even said, I'm going to go soul search. It's really the purpose of all kinds of communication. All of my stuff, I render it, though people call me like a leftist. Everybody likes to categorize other people. I see myself as somebody who tries to argue from the humanitarian point of view. Stacked bodies from authoritarian brouhahas is bad. I don't care about the ethnicity. I don't care about anything. As a human being inside of this collective of other human beings, all of us with different ideas about aesthetics and affection, how we're going to express our empathy for one another. All that stuff is all the most meaningful stuff to me. I always try to bring it back to that center. If we can just remove labels, let's look at the hard facts that are facing us and then have a meaningful conversation without trying to blame other people. Let's just really try to figure it out and figure out how to get through it with minimal upset and grace and respect.
Well, Dwayne, I'm sorry. I'm not surprised, but I am sorry that you were not defended by your employer at the time. And I'm even more sorry that attacks were whipped up against you without meaningfully engaging in your work. And I think that there's a lot of empathy that's expressed in your work that requires perspective taking abilities that most people who were reaching out to you were not capable of doing themselves. But I think that good art, especially good political art, should spark conversations. And so to the degree that they sparked those conversations, uncomfortable as they might have been for some people, I think that it's extremely worthwhile and important. And I'm wondering, there's the particularity of the situation that happened at UPenn, including a lot of their craven capitulation prior to even Trump assuming office. I'm wondering how you see this wave of censorship, of clampdown sweeping across both academia, Columbia, the biggest example, but not the only example, and the arts. there's the self-censorship, but then there's the direct censorship done by the institutions, whether they be art institutions or whether they be universities that are employing artists. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that current landscape.
No, 100%. And one thing, just to clarify, I just want to make sure that I get this in, that when I was teaching at the University of Pennsylvania, I was teaching for the Annenberg School for Communication. And I got a great deal of support from the dean there and my colleagues and the faculty, by and large. So I just wanted to say that it is really important.
That's really important. And much more of that is needed in this new landscape we're in.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, the course that I was going to teach this fall was going to be about the history of the alternative press and the underground comics movement. The whole purpose of that class, which was going to be a large class, was going to have like 90 students in it, was to examine journalism. This question that you're asking, which actually gets to the heart of, I think, what is lacking here. Well, there's a couple, because there's two ways that I would like to get into this, answering this question. And I'm going to do it this way. I would say that there are two versions of each and every one of us. There's our public self and there's our private self. So our private selves, we surround ourselves with people that we trust. And we surround ourselves with people that we can be vulnerable in front of, and we can test our theories about right and wrong with, and we can have those conversations where we figure out what we think and feel, and we can absorb what others think and feel in these private spaces. The public forum has gotten so ugly and so brutally contemptuous of expressing certain kinds of concerns that it won't even allow for it to happen in public. In previous iterations of these kinds of conversations, where did these conversations and these discussions happen? They happen in the culture. And I would argue that having this kind of empathy that I'm talking about, this humanitarian approach to things, that you embed in the culture. It doesn't reside in politics. And people have gotten so confused about how to grapple with world issues and with how we should treat each other through legislation, just through basic decency inside of a society. All of these things have been now relegated to political conversation. Politics is not about any of that. Humanitarianism does not exist inside politics. It exists inside the culture. If we look at what is actually missing in America, it's a vibrant culture that does invite the arts community into these kinds of conversations and philosophers into these kinds of conversations, musicians, poets, all of these people that when they're creating their art, they're trying to figure out, what is this really like? What does this really feel like? And I'm going to explore that, right? That's a human exploration, and it becomes a human expression. Now, I would just challenge you to ask yourself, where are you going to find that demonstrated now? It just doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in journalism so much anymore. There's no real independent journalism. There's also no long form journalism like there once was. So you need long form journalism, to sit with a problem long enough to be able to contemplate it and then deliberate on it and also participate in it. When you're reading a long piece of anything, or if you're listening to a long piece of music, it starts to ask for your participation. So you bring what your knowledge is, what your wisdom is, whatever that is, to your partnership with the information that you're absorbing, art and all this sort of stuff. And then you're existing in the moment. It's an organic situation. You have to improvise what you think and feel. Is something lacking in you? Is there something that you can now give to the thing that you're sort of grappling with and dealing with? All of those things. That's the human experience. And now so much information, it's this staccato short form blasts that are asking for your reaction to things, not your participation. We're becoming more and more a spectator population. We are not being asked to participate. And I think that that's really where we've gotten. And you can see, you saw what happened with the encampments and so forth on college campuses. Now, again, college campuses, and I'm sure you will agree, it used to be something different. It used to be something where you could congregate in public spaces and feel safe. You didn't feel like the administration was going to all of a sudden prevent you from graduating, make enough noise where job offers would be rescinded. All of that stuff is new, draconian, fascistic. And these are all real things that are happening, it's not a joke. And it's something that these kinds of conversations that you host and the work that I do is just trying to, again, like we've got to find a place in the culture that will allow this kind of conversation to have. And then also the optimism and celebration of what it means to be a human being. I mean, if you look at a lot of my work, it's less now because the vitriolic blasting noise that's happening inside the culture makes it more difficult. But if you look at the aggregate of all of my work, there's a great deal of just dick jokes. I just like to laugh. I like to sort of like have fun. And so I really want to be able to do all of that continuously, be angry when I'm angry, be celebratory when I'm celebratory, and ask that of the people I interact with.
A few things that stood out to me in what you said that I think are just so urgently needed in this moment is one, what you were saying about the passivity and the passivity amongst people, that people feel that they're just watching history. They're just watching, and that is all that is also asked of them. It's a dynamic interplay between the two, and the way that art, at least the type of art that you do, along with other things, can be a means to force that interplay, force that participation.
Yeah. Like, why is, just to ask that question of just like, so often you want to present something that will, again, like shock somebody, maybe offend them a little bit. But then the question is just like, why is this offensive to you? And quite often, and this is true for everybody, there's so much of what we think we believe in that has never been challenged. So we have so much reflexive belief inside of our heads and our hearts that just hasn't been challenged. We need to have these kinds of conversations that have, okay, you're upset. Why are you upset? And again, that allows me as a communicator then to have empathy for somebody who's upset, because I don't want to upset people. But if somebody is operating on either misinformation or these curated, prejudicial, agenda-driven movements, that's a problem, because that's its own kind of automaton behavior. And you want to sort of stop somebody and demonstrate to them just like, listen, this is dangerous for you. This is dangerous for me. And we're not interacting. And even just like when you were saying about like this passivity, it's 100% true, because yes, we're being encouraged to be passive. And it's so interesting whether it's coming from the right or the left, because the right is trying to make us passive just because they want us to be terrified. The left wants us to look at the situation. When I would say the left, I'm really talking about the Democratic Party, which has spent just the last bunch of weeks alone just looking at the lunacy of the Trump administration and basically going, look at how crazy that is. Isn't that crazy? Look how crazy that is. As if the universe is going to correct it. And it's so frustrating because you're not doing your job by pointing out the obvious. Your job is to figure out how to dismantle this weaponized attempt to control everything. There's not hysteria in this because you can see it happening. And people like you and other podcasters and journalists and people that I really respect do the hard work of naming those things. I'm here to try to provide a soundtrack. I can talk about it. I can say what my opinion is, but it's going to take all hands on deck to sort of address with the head and the heart about how to move forward as complete human beings without fracturing our humanity and only inviting certain kinds of voices into the debate.
Absolutely. I think that your focus on humanity and our shared humanity is something that is incredibly lacking in this moment overall. And it goes along with the passivity, because if you don't believe that there is this thing of a shared humanity, then passivity is a fine thing to do. I think that what you were talking about in terms of the universities and in the role that we all have in looking at what's happening as a microcosm for what's happening overall. And this chilling atmosphere that we're seeing in multiple spheres. You're seeing it amongst the lawyers, you're seeing it amongst healthcare providers, you're seeing it in all these different spheres. And one of the things that we've been putting out, at one time, it was silence equals complicity, but we're actually past that now. And we're in a new stage of much more advanced fascist consolidation. It's not consolidated. We're having this conversation, but it's much further along the trajectory where silence at this point is collaboration. I think that for a lot of people is something that is stunning to them, but once it's broken down is something that I found does move people.
Yeah, they see the other side of it. I mean, they see what the other side is. Because right now, and again, this goes back to my saying that there's no middle class. There seems to be fewer and fewer safety nets for people. And now there's even fewer and fewer just in the last few months. So people feel like speaking up is going to jeopardize literally their livelihoods. If all of our survival needs, our most basic survival needs, food, roof over our heads, but then there's social acceptance, all of these things are contingent upon an income. And so now they're using the danger of unemployment literally. I mean, there's just so much of my support now comes from subscription based. I'm on Patreon. All of these things are sort of citizens and like-minded worriers about what's going on, just trying to maintain a community. People aren't rehearsed on how to go stand into the streets. They're not instructed on now is the time to congregate around our mutual pain in a public space so we can see each other's faces. Nobody's taught that. But if we can encourage people just to step into those spaces, all of a sudden you realize the reward, the integrity, being able to experience what your heart beating feels like is the winning strategy, because it turns everything else into bullshit, quite literally. And just this past Saturday, with the hands-off gatherings and the marches around the country and around the world, I was at the one in here in Philadelphia. I usually go to Washington, but my wife is always just like, we've got to just, let's support our own hometown, you know. So we went, and you could see that there were a number of people who were seasoned. There were a lot of older people there, but there were some younger people first time. And sort of the joy and elation of feeling not alone, because that's really what this is about. You know, we're all with social media and all technology. This is when I start to sound like an old man, but it's true. We're all so very isolated. It's easy to feel like you belong to a virtual community, but it's just a virtual community. There's so much fiction surrounding what that really is. So to go into a public space and be surrounded by thousands of people who are concerned, you could feel it, where it's just like, all right, this is something that we can do again. And this is something that we should do again, you know, because it is powerful and it does demonstrate we're worth saving. You know, you see people doing all this beautiful stuff. It's just like, oh my gosh, you know, not only do I really want to save myself, but I'm surrounded by beautiful people and I want to save them too. We're a collective that is worth saving.
That's really beautiful, Dwayne. And I was in DC. I didn't stay in Philly for that one. I was so exhausted afterwards. It was important to be there. But I think that people feeling hope and that there is an alternative to this, that yes, right now, the path is a dark one and it's a hard one, but it is not the only path and it is not inevitable. People start to see a different possibility in each other. And I think that what you were talking about is, to me, people seeing their own power. I really appreciated your point of, so then you see your power and you do it again. Not that that was a good day of protest. It felt good. We let off some steam. And now we go back and we only focus on me and mine. But that it be an impetus to do more and to do bigger.
Yeah, because I mean, just to piggyback on that, because yes, you do see people that are excited to be together, but you see other people in pain and you do want to do something about it. And just getting back to the work that I do and what has inspired me over time is the traditional tactic used in satire. Satire is different from different kinds of humor. It's not burlesque. It's not parody. It's its own thing. It's actually become very, very rare. One of the things that you want satire to do is you want to infuse it with the radical notions of humor, because all humor does is it asks you to reconsider something in a new way. I mean, that's really what it is. And people find that shocking and delightful, and you will laugh at it. So satire uses those things in its construction. But one of the things that it also does is it holds on to the pain of the injustices you're trying to target. So with satire, you have some physiological release with some laughter because it has this community feeling. It also has this thing that says the subject that I'm attacking is not so big that you can't defeat it. So you use humor to sort of suggest that. It brings it small, makes it easy to fit into people's mouths. It invites them into the conversation, but it also has that little kernel of pain still in it, so that when you leave, you're just like, yes, I can do something about this. It still hurts. So now I do want to do something about it. And that's been the tradition of satire that people have forgotten. They think Saturday Night Live is satire, and it's absolutely not satire. So that's another of the reasons that I get attacked quite often, is because they don't know what satire is. It's Lenny Bruce, Bill Hicks, Jonathan Swift. I mean, we can go way back if you want. But like, this is an art form that people have used over and over again to great effect and to much merriment for people who know how to read it. And that's my challenge to people always. My output is quadrupled just in the last year alone. And I have gotten a lot of people who are thrilled by this kind of conversation. And so, yes, I've been attacked, but I've also gained many more people that are attacking me, you should know.
I'm very heartened to hear that. And it also makes so much sense. There are more people who are not for this fascist Trump than are for him. It's just that right now, too many aren't making themselves seen and heard, and that needs to change fast. And I appreciate you breaking down this satire piece. And I wanted to move the conversation to some of your work based on what you were saying about satire. I'm wondering, in the last few months, do you have pieces that you've created that are your favorite pieces of satire, or alternately, what you think is some of your most important pieces right now?
It's such a funny question. I'm laughing because I work very quickly and I throw everything into the piece of art when I'm making it, because I get the idea and it's usually very emotionally charged. And so I pour everything into it immediately. And then it's off my desk and I'm thinking of the next thing. And as a result, as I said, I've been publishing since 1990. So I have thousands of things, thousands. And I often come across things that I've done that I have completely forgotten. And sometimes I come across things that I'll have to call my older brother to help explain to me what I was thinking. But that said, the stuff that I'm most proud of right now and that I think that is my job is just the way we started this conversation. I think that cartooning for what is happening to the Palestinians, I wish there were more hours in the day to do it. It absolutely breaks my heart and makes me extremely sad. That said, I know how to turn my sadness into rage, and I know how to turn it into provocative images that are going to keep this issue super serious. I don't want it to be politicized. The fact that it is a genocide that is happening with so many eyes on it, and that there just seems to be, especially from this privileged society that we live in, is largely like, oh, Jesus, I wish we could do something about it. That is, the people who wish that they could do something about it. But they just are like, well, I don't know what to do about it. I'm going to keep this megaphone as loud and shrill as I can, and I'm going to hit it on as many different stylistic approaches that I can. Chris Hedges is doing the same thing. I'm doing my cartoons, and I'll get his column that I have to illustrate, and I get to do very artful things to accompany his columns. So one piece that I did a few weeks ago that went far and wide and brought in a lot of international readership for me was the travel poster I did. It says Explore Gaza, and it's modeled on a vintage Italian travel poster with this couple on a Vespa. And of course, how do you update that? Oh, well, they're driving over just a mountain of skulls. And that's what it is. I mean, that's the thing about satire. It's just like, okay, again, what is this really about? All right, it's about this. All right, what's the metaphor that is going to turn heads? It's this. Normalizing catastrophe like that will make people really angry who are really angry about it. And it'll challenge other people to just hopefully self-examine and involve themselves with the conversation. Like, one of the things, if you look at the work that I do so many different styles just for the reason that we're talking about right now. And I wonder if that might be part of the reason why so many of the traditional editorial cartoonists, aside from being afraid to lose their jobs, have a style that is only conducive to whimsy or a caricature in the traditional cartooning sense. You can't use that style when there are hundreds and thousands of dead people who are targeted. You can't do it. You know, it's just like, how would Zippy react to this? It's not a Peanuts cartoon. You have to take the time. Many of the things that I work on, they take hours. Some of them take days, because the subject merits that level of seriousness and that level of depth and dedication that I can give it. Because if I can do something that's going to keep somebody stylistically excited about what I'm doing longer in front of the piece that I have, that gives more opportunity to deepen the conversation, or deepen the examination, probably is a more accurate way to put it. And that's what we need. We need deeper examinations of what this is. This is not a two-dimensional issue. This is not sports. This is not, I'm going to back my team because they're wearing the jersey that I've grown up to say represents the good guys. Anything outside of that are the villains. It's that kind of simplicity that is just like, it's literally endangering the species at this point. We have to throw our bodies on the cogs of that kind of machinery.
Absolutely. I wanted to just share some of the cartoons you've done that have struck me recently that I think also have resonated with a lot of our listeners. One that I just think is so powerful was your mandatory dress code for the graduating class one. For those listening, it's a man in a suit and their eyes are covered and there's tape on their mouth. And I think it just says so much about what is being done to young people in this society right now. Another one that, on the similar vein, your work on the universities in particular, there's a bunch of cartoons that you've done on this. The hostile takeover one, I think, went really viral because it spoke directly to what so many were seeing unfold. And for listeners, we'll post the cartoons with the interview, but it's a university president council of trustees meeting. And there's just a really brilliant quote underneath that just captures so much about the moment, and the waiting it out one about things eventually getting back to normal, pretending I give a shit about you again. Like, it just captures so much. And then the last one I wanted to lift up to just share was the wishbone that you did. That's not what it's titled. Unbroken is the title of the cartoon. On one side, it's fascism. The other side, there's the word democracy at the bottom. And at top, it says, simply wishing we weren't so fucked won't unfuck us. And at the bottom, democracy can only grow if we stay unbroken. Those were just some that really spoke to me about where we're at right now and the directness that you were providing the viewer, I think.
Well, again, I mean, if I can encourage people to just attempt the blunt truth and honesty, I mean, all of those cartoons that you just named, they're literally true. I mean, that's the thing about them. I challenge anybody to look at any of that stuff and say that I'm fabricating something. And that's been the history of art forever. What is this really like? How can I say it as straightforward as possible? People aren't used to hearing that. I used to tell my students, and just to give the analogy of somebody who is an artist or somebody who is a writer or somebody who's just neither one of those things, but is trying to figure out the meaning of life or something really important, you go to a private space so you can think about it. And in these private spaces, you're not getting the pressure to reframe how you think and how you communicate to fit the dominant culture or the status quo. And so the way I talk about it with my students, I'm just like, okay, if you're sitting at home alone in a room and you have an itchy ass, what do you do? And they're all just like, well, I scratch it. And I'm like, what if you're in public and you have an itchy ass? And they're just like, oh. And there's actually a website that you can look up with all of these different techniques to scratch your ass without being noticed. If you just use that corporeal itch of an itchy ass as an irritant that you want to fix, apply that to just directly into the public square and many of the issues that we have. These are irritants that need scratching immediately. But we're in these public spaces. We have no practice in attacking these things and getting rid of the itch. Artists, writers, and philosophers and scientists even, these are people that they don't want to know what the BS version of reality is. They want to find out, what is this really about? So we've got to protect those communities, and we've got to protect the venues wherein their findings can be shared.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask one last question as we close out, if that's all right with you. In this moment, a lot of people are agonizing over the rise of fascism, doom scrolling, getting stressed out, sharing memes or your cartoons, maybe talking with close friends about this nightmare. And even while the outpourings on Saturday were a really good beginning, many are still hesitant to take action or to take consistent action. And I'm wondering what you think right now art can do or should be doing, how we can use art right now to move people to take action or engage people in that headspace.
The arts community has always been there. It will always be there. It predates the written word, for God's sakes. So these people are surrounding us all. And so they're producing things. Unfortunately, now the platforms wherein you can see their work is also among a ton of doomsday scenarios that just indicate hopelessness. That's a problem. We have to figure out, again, how to get the arts community active again. We need theater. We need public spaces where we can gather. Maybe that's the best advice. Literally, it might just be as smart as put your phone down. Seek the camaraderie of real life people. They're all around you. And talk about how it isn't over. I mean, humanity has saved itself many times over and has exerted its desire to live another day and has succeeded at it. If we can just do our best is to remain optimistic, tell the people we love that we love them, show them that, take time for ourselves to also celebrate what moments are joyous and meaningful and worthy of recognizing. It'll allow you to have the energy for the other stuff, because there are some very serious things that we have to grapple with. I'm not going to say that we don't. But at the same time, we're all concerned and we all need to make life as poetic as possible, which means so much of reality is happening in our peripheral vision. Let it find us and let us celebrate each other's common quest for living another day. And I think we can do it.
Dwayne, I want to thank you so much, most importantly, for the work that you do, for the art that you share with us, and for taking the time to talk with me about it, to talk with us about it, to share your expertise, your insight, and your perspective. I would be remiss if I did not share with you that there is a call to conscience, a call to act that Refuse Fascism is written, with the foundation being our main pledge to the world. No, in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America and the demand the Trump fascist regime must go. And in it, it talks about the undersigned calling on the decent people who don't want to live in a fascist America to courageously rise up as one. And it talks about different sections rising up and what that would look like, and includes artists, writers, clergy, and legal scholars speaking in many voices to say no, bringing their voices into the struggle. And it would be great to get to strategize about what it might look like to visually permeate these demands, how that could become something that gains traction.
100%. I'm actually starting a Substack for this very reason. I really want to have these conversations and absolutely get them out there. And that said, if you don't know, all of the work that I do, I make available for absolutely free. Anybody that wants to use them for this kind of work that they do, this is serious work for me. This is, yes, I like doing it, but it is also life or death to me. And if I can help, make that message go further and excite more people, I have certain abilities and I'm absolutely 100% willing to share them with anybody who wants to work with me.
I wanted to thank you so much. And I want to make sure that listeners know how to support you and your work and where to find more of your work. Where do you want to direct people?
My website is clowncrack.com. And if people go to Clowncrack, that has links to Patreon and to my books and to the trailer for the documentary that's about me and just all wonderful things, all my books and everything. So that's a great starting place. And they can also follow me on Instagram while I'm still on Instagram at Mr. Fish Cartoons.
Perfect. And we'll link those both in the show notes. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. Great talking to you.
Now, here is my interview with activist, artist, printmaker, and curator, Karen Fiorito. I'm so glad to be talking to Karen Fiorito. It is a delight to get to talk, especially about her bold billboards that if you haven't seen, you're going to want to check the show notes. So welcome, Karen. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's start by talking about your current billboard project in Arizona, in Phoenix, correct?
Yes, it's at 11th and Grand Avenues in downtown Phoenix.
They've hosted a number of your artworks very explicitly calling out MAGA fascism, which I think is tremendous. And I just wanted to know, how did this come to be? How's it going? Tell us more about it.
This is not my first billboard about fascism in the United States. The billboard project, it's called the Grand Avenue Billboard Project, and it's sponsored by a local activist and artist, Beatrice Moore. She has been an activist for 40 some years in Phoenix. She moved in there when the area was very underdeveloped and bought some land pretty cheap and opened it up for artists and artist studios. She's tried to keep the rents affordable for artists in that area, and she's fought against any kind of development in that area. So I met her when I was in grad school at Arizona State University, and I was lucky enough to do my graduate work there and have a couple of fellow professors who were very political at the time, and one who was at Kent State University when everything went down then, and we were comparing it to the Iraq War. It was right after 9/11 that I started grad school. So I started doing really much more overt political art. I was always kind of a political artist, but not overtly. And I started doing street art and putting my art on the streets. And my professors were all very supportive of me. They were like, yeah, you should meet Robbie Connell. And that's how I met Robbie. I wrote to him and was like, hey, I'm a street artist. How do you do what you do? Like, tell me all your secrets. So I started doing street art, and it wasn't very popular what I was doing because it was anti-Iraq War, anti-George Bush. And it kept getting ripped down. So one of my professors was like, oh, there's this artist, activist, Beatrice Moore. She's very anti-war, and she has like a no war sign in her studio. She had a front-facing, kind of like a storefront with a glass window, and she put stop war in it. And people like actually shot at her window at that time. Like when at night they'd come by and like shoot at her sign. And I met her and I said, hey, can I borrow your billboard, basically? Because I'm tired of my art being ripped down. I'm a political artist. I showed her some of my art, and she was like, yeah, I think we can do something. Was so excited. I ran back to my home and like came up with all these sketches, sent her a bunch of stuff. And that was the first billboard in 2003. It was a anti-Bush billboard, anti-Iraq War billboard. I left Arizona. I went to LA, and then 2016 or 17, Beatrice came back to me and said, can we do a anti-Trump billboard? And I said, absolutely. We put up what we now refer to as the Trumpocalypse billboard, which went kind of viral. That was Trump in the middle, surrounded by $2 signs that resemble swastikas. And then in between, on either side of him, are mushroom clouds that actually have clown faces in them. I had no words, which is very rare for one of my billboards, but it didn't need any at that time. I think it was what a lot of us felt. So the billboard's two-sided. On the back of that billboard was the Unity billboard that I did, which had the flag of Arizona in the background, the sunburst, and then 5 hands that spelled out Unity in sign language, and then the word Unity above it. That became pretty viral. And then since then, we haven't really stopped because that stood up till he was not elected again, till Biden came in. And then we put up for a little bit the same billboard, but I put him behind bars and I put him in an orange jumpsuit with Don the Con name tag on him. So that was called Don the Con. Then we did the baby Bush's billboard, the Dictator Dons, and that was 3 Donald Trump babies. One was burning the Constitution, one's like burning the American flag, and the other one's building up the word I love fascism in baby blocks with a Putin Russian bear beside him. And his onesie says, Putin's mini-me. There's a lot in there. There's also a Confederate flag cake, and there's a bucket of Hitler fried chicken, and that was before the election, and that went up last March, and that was up for a year, and it didn't really go viral until right before we put the new one up, which is Elon Musk doing his little Nazi salute with a Trump puppet in his hand, and that says Project 2025, Trump, Musk, and enablers are shredding the Constitution and screwing the American people. We also put the tagline, paid for by 78.9 million people who didn't vote for Trump. And then on the back is Trump looking stupid saying, I don't know anything about, I have nothing to do with Project 2025, and then a list of the Project 2025 agenda. So it's a two-sided thing again, like the Trumpocalypse, where they kind of go together. The first one was like despair and hope. This one's just, I don't know, anger, I think.
Yeah, rage, and also a little reminder that it's the majority that is enraged. Your rage isn't just you, one person, feeling this. There's so many of us who are looking at this in disgust. And I think that you feel that when you look at the billboard.
Yeah. We put that tagline on because the last one, people were saying that, oh, I bet this was like funded by George Soros or the Democratic Party or whatever. And we're two independent people who, this is our opinion. This is what we do to kind of fight back. It's a great platform to have a billboard, and very few people have that platform. I find it really empowering that two women activists, maybe 20 years apart in age still, we have been able to do this for so long and get away with it for so long.
It's a precious thing to have. It's a really precious thing to have. What has the response been to the latest billboard that went up last month?
It's been overwhelmingly positive, I would say. I did an interview with Newsweek and Arizona Central, which is one of the main papers in Arizona or websites. And I have gotten, the typical Trump derangement syndrome comments and things like that, but no death threats. The last two billboards, we haven't had any death threats, which I think is really weird because ever since 2004, I've been getting death threats. Every time I put up a billboard, I did an anti-Fox News one in Santa Monica, and I did some other ones, but every time I question the right, I get death threats. I mean, last time we got hate, but this time it's not a lot of hate. I keep thinking that maybe most people just really kind of agree this time, that this is wrong or this is a step too far or a bridge too far. I hope that's a good sign of not getting death threats. Although I think Beatrice last time, she was so funny. She was like, we didn't get any death threats. I'm so disappointed. And I was like, I'm kind of okay with that. Because, there's a saying that when you piss people off, it's like you're doing something right. Like when you piss off the wrong people. Good trouble. It's been very supportive. I think things are different now, too. What we did in 2017 was so much more shocking than it is now. Swastikas everywhere.
I think that also speaks to how far the fascism has advanced.
Because we didn't even put up swastikas. We put up dollar signs kind of resembling swastikas. And that upset people. Now I see swastikas everywhere on the street, on Tesla cars.
It's now, I don't want to say normalized, but it's much more part of the mainstream to use that depiction. That definitely resonates. I wanted to talk a little bit about, you spoke to some of this at the beginning, but how you see the billboard fitting into your larger body of work, like your non-billboard work.
Yes, I'm a printmaker. I have my master's in printmaking from ASU, and I guess my specialty would be like screen printing, but I like all forms of printmaking. I do all forms of printmaking, but most of my work is political. I'd say I do have a couple of series. I have a series called Sacred Beings that's about animals they're animals as Buddhas and different beings, but it's about our connection to animals and how I believe animals are people, basically. They deserve respect and love. They're just as much part of the planet as we are, and we need to respect and love them and care for them. The same with, I have a whole series of plants and my connection to plants and things like that. Those are kind of things I do on the side to just do things that are pretty, because I hate to say that. There is a deeper meaning behind them, but you do so much political art for so long, and it's you have to have a side hustle almost. Robbie Connell has his cats. He draws cats on the side. He loves drawing cats. Nothing political about it. It's kind of a release, from always having to think about politics. There is a lot of politics in it because I am a vegan and I am an animal rights activist. I feel very connected to animals and nature, and I just believe that we don't have that connection as much as we should, and we need that in our lives. But I have a lot of work that's socio-political. That kind of stuff doesn't sell, though, as much. Some of it does, but the animal plant stuff sells a lot more. I think it's always been hard to be a political artist, but now especially I feel like a lot of people don't want to talk about politics or think about it. And the thing is, I learned from living in LA for almost 20 years, the art world is run by rich people. And you look at museums and things, their major sponsors are like corporations like Chevron or the Sackler family. I don't really want to be in that world because I don't agree with unfettered capitalism. And it's kind of come to the point where I kind of consider myself more of an activist than an artist, if that makes any sense.
It absolutely makes sense. You're using your art for that purpose, to change people's thinking and to speak to people's souls, for lack of a better word. I know it's a weird word to use in this context, but that's kind of how I see it. Through the billboard, you're making a very explicit anti-fascist message, and you're also taking a hard stance, similar to what you were just saying, that political art is for the people, not just for those who make time to go to a museum or a special gallery show, and that art needs to impact society, that's the point of art. And I was just wondering if you have any thoughts that you'd want to share on what it means for art to impact society in the time of fascism.
I think art has always impacted society. And I think that every kind of art, whether it be music, movies, visual art, performance art. I always, for inspiration, look back to 1930s Germany and Kathy Kollwitz and Hannah Hawk and John Hartfield and all the anti-fascist artists. And I'm actually wearing a t-shirt, Degenerate Artists Against Fascism, that I got from Ted Fiorito years ago. But yeah, they were considered degenerate artists in Nazi Germany, and there weren't that many of them, but they made quite an impact on art and art history, and not only art history, but a lot of them saved lives. A lot of them were very outspoken and inspired other people and other artists to be outspoken. And I think that part of my job is to try to inspire people to speak out and speak up, because I know it's like terrifying right now. I'm just applied for a job. What if they look me up and see, someone sees my social media, they know who I am, they know what I'm saying, they see my art, my billboards. I'm fairly transparent. It goes in and out of popularity to these things. I look at the Hope poster, Shepard Fairey. It's like, that was very popular, but now these things go in and out of popularity. And I think that a lot of people are fed up right now. And it's not just the Democrats or the liberals or whatever you want to say. It's not just the independents. It's a lot of people, more people than I think people realize. And I think when we realize that we're not alone and that there's so many others out there that feel the way we do, it gives us so much power. And when we come together and protest or come together in a boycott or come together, it's so meaningful. Every little thing, even though it's like, oh, it's just one protest or it's just one boycott. No, it's a total sum of the parts is what makes something great. I think we need to remember that. And I think we often feel very alone. I know I live in a kind of a red area, and sometimes I feel like I'm the only one here. It feels this way. But I have to remember there are other people like me. And I think that's so important, that anyone can put up a billboard. Anyone can hang their sign, That's what America is about. And that's, even if you put up a lawn sign saying how you feel, that's participating in a movement right there.
Absolutely. What you were saying resonated with me so much. And I was thinking, my mom lives in a red area. It wasn't always like that. It was an area that turned really red. And Saturday meant so much to her because she was able to see people. And I think that that's so true for so many people, being able to look in other people's eyes and be like, I am not alone. We are a force. And then for people to go out from there, knowing that they have that foundation of being part of something larger than themselves, and that giving them the courage to put that bumper sticker on their car, put that lawn sign out, put the sign in their window.
So much of social media is controlled by the algorithm. We don't see what people really think and feel.
Yeah, I think that's so true. I read the Newsweek piece that you mentioned earlier, and there was this quote from you. You were referencing a quote from someone else, but then you were adding on to it. And you were saying that I believe that as the famous quote goes, art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable. And you went on to say, I want people who are afraid to know they are not alone. I want those in power to know that we are watching. And I just found that really powerful in the different groups that art speaks to, that it speaks that it can challenge the powers that be and empower the oppressed. And I just think that that's a really important point in this idea of disruption at a time where we need mass disruption. They're trying to cement an order of fascism. To be silent is to be a collaborator at this point.
Oh, definitely. I definitely think so. And they want compliance, a very disciplined in the media and other institutions for just kind of kissing the ring and immediately just bowing down because it's cowardice. It's not about people. They don't care about people. They care about their bottom line. That's pathetic.
I really agree. It's on both levels. It's like morally bankrupt to capitulate. It's morally bankrupt to do that. And it's also strategically wrong. It's not going to save you. No matter how much censorship a university does or an institution does, it's not going to protect them from really coming after them. At least in the long term, it might hold them at bay temporarily, but not as a permanent solution. They're just going to advance further and further. Right now, there is an overt attack underway on the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression. There's everything that happened with the Kennedy Center. There's a censorship happening at universities, afraid of being penalized for diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. There's been firings and resignations, but as of yet, not defiance amongst the art community. And I'm wondering, how you see the stakes in the moment and what does it mean to be an artist of conscience now?
I think everything's at stake right now. Our democracy, our human rights, our everything you can think of is at stake right now. And I'm a part of, and I'm not a part of the art world. I mean, I exist, but I don't exist on that level. But I don't see a lot of pushback because, again, getting back to what I said before, it's like a lot of the art world is controlled by rich people. If you want to make it as an artist, you can't rely on like Joe Schmo buying your work. You have to rely on collectors and Christie's, and some of these artists get a little into that world, suddenly they've made it and they're making $1 million a year. Are they going to come out with a controversial statement that might like ruin their chances of getting into the Whitney, or are they going to shut up and do something that's acceptable, but maybe pushing the line, but in an acceptable way? I think there's very few artists that are really standing up, and I find it sad in a way. I do know some that are, and those people are the ones that I look to for inspiration and to keep going. And one is Suko, who I love, and she is just such an amazing person.
She's great. She's great. She's great. I don't know her as an individual. I only know her as her art. And as a fellow vegan, I really, really love her art.
Yeah, I met her in grad school. She came to give a talk, and I'm just such a fan girl. I went over to her with a print of mine, and I was crying. And she's like, "You're a little Suko," and she like hugged me. I was like, "Oh," so like I was just so privileged. I've been in some shows with her and actually curated a show with her in it. And we still like talk. She emails me articles and things. She's just so inspiring, and she's so smart and so good. Just such a powerful artist. Like, I love her work. I know a lot of people, what was it Robbie said? I love Sue's work, but I can't look at it. I can't look at a lot of it or something like that. But yeah, a lot of it's about animal rights and the horrible, horrible things that we do to this planet and to animals. But she just came out with a book about fascism, and I look to her as there's somebody at least who's still alive that's still doing this work and is killing it, just killing it and always killing it. And that gives me hope. It gives me so much hope because there are not a lot of Sukos out there, in my opinion. I wish there were a lot more because I think the world would be a better place. But God bless her. She's just always an inspiration to me.
I think it's really important to have those examples of inspiration, right? When you see the majority capitulating, collaborating, accommodating, it's important to have those models of defiance and refusal. And then you are a model of that defiance and that refusal for others. That's how I see the dynamic working.
It just seems like unbelievable that this is happening again in our lifetime. But there are people who see that correlation, too. We're not the only ones anymore. It used to be like if you said something about this is fascism, people would be like, oh my God.
You are so hyperbolic.
Just crazy.
You can't make parallels like that.
Oh my God. I was in South Africa in like October and I went out to dinner with a bunch of people I didn't know. And I basically said Elon Musk was a Nazi, but they like blew up at me. They were like, oh, don't say that word. You can't say that word. We don't talk about that. Like, don't you ever say that word. Like, I'm not talking to you anymore because you said that word. I was like, really? Well, my uncle fought Nazis. I'm not going to stop talking about Nazis. Sorry. I'm sorry. I feel like I have the right. They gave me that right to talk about Nazis. And when you see a Nazi or a fascist, you call it out.
Yeah, I think that's so essential. You don't prettify it for them. You name it as part of opposing it. If people can't confront what it is that they're facing, they can't properly fight against it. If you think you have a bellyache instead of cancer, the way that you're going to treat that bellyache is very different than the way that you're going to treat a cancer. If you don't have the right diagnosis, you can't get the right treatment. So I think that you're right. It's absolutely a crucial part is just calling it what it is, not stopping there. We have to do more than calling him a Nazi, as true as it is. But yeah, I think it's crucial to do it. And the way that you do it through art, through public art, through art that is in your face is so, so needed now. And I think what you said earlier was just a really good reminder to me. You said, anyone can do this. Now, nobody's going to do it like you do it, Karen. It's not going to be, may not be as artful, right? But the point of we can do this. We can not all be talented artists, but we can all find the ways to speak out, to visually represent our resistance. As we close out the conversation, what do you think for people who maybe aren't artists? What are some suggestions you might give people for being visual in their resistance? What do you think would be visual ways to mark their resistance?
Well, I really enjoyed all the signs for the protest this last weekend. I thought the creativity was off the chart. One of the things I joke about, because I've seen that group, Everyone Hates Elon, group in London of street artists. They're putting up fake Tesla ads and things. I love that kind of street art, first of all, but there's so many things you can do in your own community. I mean, whether it's like wearing a t-shirt or putting a bumper sticker on your car or a lawn sign, those are just small forms of resistance. But I think right now, like, we need to protest at every level. Like, even if you can't get to the Capitol, you can get to your local city hall and form a group, get together and make a bunch of signs. I've seen that going on all over.
Well, I wanted to thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, for sharing your expertise, your perspectives, your insight, and most importantly, your art. And I want to make sure that people can see more of your work and connect with you. What is the best way? Where should we direct people?
I'm on Instagram, my full name, Karen Fiorito, on Facebook. My website is karenfiorito.me, or you can email me at karenfiorito@gmail.com.
Well, we will definitely put those links in the show notes. Again, it was so great to meet you, and I'm so glad to connect. And I love that you're wearing that t-shirt, and we need more of that. We need more artists following your lead.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Refuse Fascism. Hopefully you're as inspired as I am to get the demand Trump must go, and in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America visually permeating society. So if you're ready to get visual in your resistance this week, get together with friends, with neighbors, with family, and make posters, make stickers with these slogans, make banners, make signs, and get them up everywhere. And if you don't feel that artistic itch, but you feel the itch to get these demands up everywhere, you can order them off of refusefascism.org or print them off of refusefascism.org. They're not all for ordering. There's plenty of resources to print and post for free. Make sure to take pictures and tag at Refuse Fascism. Want to support the show? Amazing. Spread the imperative and support the show by getting merch. We have new t-shirts with the slogan Trump Must Go on them. See the show notes to get yours today. You can also get sticker packs to spread the word. Join our Patreon community to fuel refusal of this fascist nightmare and make content like this possible. Sign up at patreon.com/refusefascism. Or if you want to make a one-time gift, you can go to refusefascism.org and hit the donate button, or Venmo refuse-fascism. And for $0, you can help by sharing the show with others, rating and reviewing on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, or commenting on our socials or YouTube. It makes a difference and is so appreciated. So be sure to connect with us on social media at Refuse Fascism, including on Blue Sky. And we are on TikTok as well under Refuse Fascism, but fascism to get around the rules is FASHISM. As always, thanks to Richie Marini, Lena Thorne, and Mark Tinkelman for helping produce this episode. Until next Sunday, in the name of humanity, we refuse to accept a fascist America.